Am I not on? Hello, can anybody hear me? All right, hello. All right, if you ladies talk, I'll adjust levels. Okay, welcome. Everyone take a seat here. Hi, Tally. All right, welcome to the kickoff of Community Week. My name is Katie Grice. I'm Vice President of Sales for Boyne Resorts, and it's my privilege to also serve as the board chair of the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. I've been a resident of Big Sky for 15 years. Since 1985, the Chamber has served as a voice of business in Big Sky, striving for a healthy economy built on the foundation of collaboration. Our community's collective success requires businesses, individuals, and industry to all have access to tools that they need to thrive. In the almost 40 years of the Chamber's existence, we have overcome a recession and built the biggest skiing in America, strengthened air travel into Southwest Montana, increasing the direct flights into our market. We fostered Big Sky's first housing study, supporting the Housing Trust, the inception of the Housing Trust. We facilitated the transportation study leading to the success of the Tiger Grant. And we've prioritized the needs of the community through listening sessions, information, and sharing events, and an open door for all. At the Chamber, we know our role and successes for our community were important, but more importantly, we know that it took a lot of collaboration. Each milestone represents a community coming together. It represents valuing community partners with a common goal in mind, which is a better Big Sky. As I look around our community, it looks a lot different from when I first arrived. It's important that we're thoughtful, collaborative, and engaged as we move towards addressing the issues that our community faces. Our Big Sky vision and strategy is the focus of today's session, and it was built on these values with support of BizRad. I'm honored to share this stage right now with Sarah Blechta, who is a fellow female chair, I'll add. Sarah, I am proud of the collaboration that we've had with BizRad in the Chamber, and I'm excited for the week of programming ahead.
Thank you, Katie. I am super excited for this week. I don't know if any of you had a chance to come last year, but I can already tell the turnout is great, and we've got way more events happening all week. So I hope to see all of you all week. I know my calendar is pretty full. I'm so proud of how far the Chamber has moved forward. A lot of these things and many initiatives in Big Sky, and we truly are better together. It is my favorite saying. I have the button. I hope all of you grab the button in the back. It's really critical to our success. I'm Sarah Blechta. I'm the Vice President of Property Associations for the Yellowstone Club and the board chair of BizRad. I've been a resident here since 1991. I went to Ophir. There wasn't a high school when I was here, so I went away for high school and college and came back to raise my family with my husband. Katie's right. This community looks much different than it did when I first moved here. That's why the BizRad board recognized the need for increased engagement, long-term planning, and coordination among all the organizations that truly make Big Sky better together. The framework for that planning resulted in the Our Big Sky plan, our Big Sky vision and strategy, which you'll learn more about today, and efforts underway with that plan. The plan was developed by the people, for the people, and requires constant engagement. This week's programming is designed to help you participate in the areas that you care about. We've structured the following tracks for you to join the conversations that matter the most to you. Government. Gain a deeper understanding of how elected officials in our region use the tools at their disposal to build a thoughtful community. Boots on the ground. Learn how to plug in and help the people and organizations that make Big Sky the community that we love. Big ideas. Engage with public and private partners as they tackle Big Sky's current challenges and opportunities. Daily coverage of the activities will be shared through our social channels, and most events will be recorded so you can watch at your convenience. We stand at a crossroads. Big Sky is changing, and we, the community, have an ability to influence that change. This is evidenced in our everyday work, including things like the Tiger Grant. We even put a stoplight here several years ago. We have the power to make change in this community. We invite you to join the conversation, and we look forward to seeing and hearing from you over the course of this week. I'd like to introduce Ruthie Solari, the Director of Community Partnerships for the Yellowstone Club Community Foundation, to kick off our discussion today. Thanks, Ruthie.
Hi, everyone. How are you all doing? Lunch is good? Awesome. Well, thank you for, so my name is Ruthie Solari. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships with Yellowstone Club Community Foundation. And the reason I'm here today is I've had the privilege of working alongside Jenny and Danny with BizRad to facilitate some of the implementation strategy for the Our Big Sky plan. So before I get started, how many of you have read all 41 pages of the Our Big Sky plan? A couple people in the audience. How many of you, this is the first time seeing it? Awesome, thank you for raising your hand. So I'm going to give a little brief context and history for how this plan came to be. So Big Sky Resort Area District, the resort tax is a 4% tax on luxury goods and items and housing and food and everything that people spend here in Big Sky. And over the years, resort tax started raising more and more money. And as they raised money, they thought, wait a minute, we're now at a critical point where we need to have a strategy for how do we spend this money in the community? How do we make sure, to Sarah's point, that these investments we're putting into the community are led through community voice and through the leaders who are here doing the work and the boots on the ground. So in 2019, they hired a contractor to come in and help with the development of the Our Big Sky vision and strategy. And this document came together through hundreds of interviews with community members, really trying to understand, what do people in Big Sky care about? Where do they want to see these investments going? What kind of impact do we want to have? And there were 4 themes that emerged: our people, our character, our recreation, and our natural environment. And in these 41 pages, there's a lot of really amazing insights into the community. And when it was produced in 2019, the question became, well, who's going to do the work now? Now we have a lot of great ideas, but who's going to do the work? So an organic grassroots committee came together called the Coordinating Council of Big Sky. And some of those members are here today. These committee members are comprised of district leaders as well as nonprofit leaders who said, you know, we represent the strategies that we want to work on. We need to come together and we need to be coordinated in these efforts. So that's the Coordinating Council of Big Sky. In this unincorporated community, it's a little bit like an unofficial town council, if you will. So they've met first in 2019, and some of the people at the table were there, and some of that leadership has since transitioned on. They had one meeting, and then what happened in early 2020? Pandemic, right? COVID. So everything in the community pivoted to really focus on Big Sky relief. And that's when all the foundations and BizRad came together to say, how do we respond to the pandemic? But this, Our Big Sky strategy and plan was still sitting there. So in 2020, late 2020, early 2021, the funding partners in Big Sky were starting to think, how do we really collaborate on our investments in this community? How do we make sure, again, that we're going back to some of the initial information that came out of the plan? And we recognized we needed to do some visioning sessions, some strategies, if you will, strategizing, if you will. So there's a framework up in front of you here, and it's also on page 4 in this booklet. So if any of you pick this up on the way in, you can take a look. But the idea is, how do we start with a big vision for the strategies that we're focusing on, a big vision for what do we want to accomplish here? And then how do we slowly distill that vision into initiatives that are really specific and into projects that are fundable? And so all the people at the table, as well as other coordinating council members, went through some different working sessions and workshops with Lori Addix, with Jenny and Danny and myself, starting to envision, what do we want to do within each of these sectors? And so we call it the sky to dirt. So at the sky level, what you're going to hear today as you go through each of these sectors is the individuals are going to share, what is this strategy, this vision that I want to accomplish that really would represent significant change in the community. Let me tell you about some of the initiatives that I'm collaborating on, and then what are the projects that you'll probably see more in action in the years to come. So before I move on, that's kind of the context for the Our Big Sky 2022 update that was released just earlier this year. And that's what these folks are going to share. I do want to just preface that this is a panel for the next 45 minutes, but there are events taking place for the course over the course of the next week. There's some specific deep dives into subject areas that you may want to learn more about. So water supply, emergency management, transportation, and housing will actually have deep dive panels that I encourage you to take a look at the calendar. All right, so without further ado, I am going to kick us off with Brad Niva, CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Big Sky, and he's going to talk about the positive climate where businesses can prosper, as well as a quality visitor experience that is in balance with local needs. Thanks, Brad.
Learn to turn on the mic. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Brad Niva. I'm one of a handful of people here that are pretty new to Big Sky. I was recruited here 16 months ago to take on the role of leadership for Big Sky Chamber of Commerce and Visit Big Sky. My background has mostly been in economic development and business ownership, and then specifically tourism. So I've at one time owned 3 companies that all were tourism based. And the board here thought I was a good match for Big Sky. So I lived in Bend, Oregon for 25 years and watched how that community grew and all the challenges that Bend has. And now I'm hopefully got the right tools to help Big Sky grow as well. In the 2 initiatives that were really key for our office, and I have 2, others will just have 1, because we also have the Chamber of Commerce, we also have a separate 501c6 as Visit Big Sky, which is our designated tourism office. But in the positive business climate is what we really talk about in the chamber. We basically have 3 initiatives that are outlined in the book that if you take a peek on page 7. So first is to create educational opportunities for businesses. Our real goal is to, how do we help businesses succeed? And that could be from simple bookkeeping ideas to hiring processes, all the tools that a business owner needs to be successful in Big Sky. So we're constantly working through that process. The next step is provide tools for recruitment and retention. You know, one of the things that we all are challenged with is finding our workforce and how do we keep people here in Big Sky. So it's just not just the recruitment, but I think it's really about retention. How do we keep people here, make them part of our community? How do we get them to put roots in the ground? That's really where a community can grow, is when you have people actually stay and the kids going to school and things like that. So that's of course a huge goal of ours. And then the third is to advocate for businesses and nonprofits to partner and collaborate. Our organization's been around for a little over 40 years. I mean, when you look back at the history of this community, our organization has worn a lot of hats. And I think as we've watched the community grow, we've seen where there's opportunities to build new groups to come in and step in, like a housing trust or other example, you know, other organizations that can start doing a bigger lift than what the chamber could have done early on. So now we are really trying to get back to focusing on what's exactly what the business needs. And so going forward, the next couple of years for us is, of course, housing. And it's not our job to fix housing. I mean, we all feel like we're part of the housing answer. And so, of course, supporting the housing trust in numerous ways to make things better. We also are concerned about workforce housing and the fact that there are a lot of people who have housing, but they really feel like there's a threat that that housing could go away. And so those are always things that we're looking at to support. Next is childcare. We really look at most of our families and parents are working parents in this community, and childcare is continually an underserved product or a need in our community. So the Chamber of Commerce has been very involved in looking at that. If we could help a working family have an opportunity to put their kids in safe and reliable childcare so that they could actually pick up a job 4 hours a day or 2 full-time days a week, anything we can do to support the workforce and get more people back at work. And then, of course, none of this work gets done by ourselves. These are all partnered projects. So our partners are BizRad, of course, the Housing Trust, WIA, Big Sky Community Organization, and then other regional partners. When I made the list of the challenges we have of housing and workforce, I think we always kind of end up thinking like, well, this is just a Big Sky problem, but in reality, this is happening all over the country. So we need to look at other opportunities and other ways that people are solving this problem across the country. So we're really doing our best to work there. All right, I'll hop over to on the tourism side, and that's that tactic is quality visitor experience balanced with the local needs. And this is an interesting space for us right now, especially with COVID. We had a lot of visitors in town over the last couple of years. And I think we started seeing some of our weak points of managing tourists and how do we communicate with tourists and then make sure that those who live here still have a fantastic place to live and don't feel like there's tourism pushing down on them. We realized that was a pretty standard situation in a lot of mountain towns over the last couple of years of COVID. But now that the rest of the world's opening back up, we're seeing some things starting to spread out. We're actually seeing our visitor counts this next year actually being down a little bit. I know that's a threat to business because we are a visitor economy and we want to make sure people are still coming. But at the same time, I hear it from businesses that they're starting to breathe a little easier because they actually can manage what's coming their way compared to what's happened over the last couple of years. We have three particular messages or where we're working in this space. One is to manage the visitor's experience with clear information. One of the hardest things is to get a visitor to come. But once they're here, are we delivering a great product and a great experience? And that's something that we continue to need to build out. The last thing I ever want to do is have a customer leave us and go, well, I really didn't like Big Sky because of this. That's a real threat to our long-term goals of the community. So we want to make sure that we continue to have a above average or exceed their expectations when they come to Big Sky. Next step for us is to produce a destination strategy. This goes into how do we manage the visitors that are coming? How do we manage a nice place to live for us? How do we unload these parking lots at trailheads or issues with parking at the ski area? I mean, all these little different things that affect the local, but as well as the visitor. So those are problems that we're trying to solve. And then last is just to inform and educate businesses to support a good visitor experience. And we're doing that in a number of ways. One is we're doing a really robust level of data collection now that we can actually tell you how many people are in town on a given day, where they go, what they do. We also are able to really manage now occupancy in town, and that we can actually do a report, hoping in the next couple of weeks to actually roll it out to all of our restaurants. And we'll be able to, all our residents, restaurants and businesses, excuse me, that we can actually tell you how many people are coming into town this next week. And so that is some pretty neat technology that we can actually start telling businesses like, hey, it looks like town's going to be 72% full this week. Next week, it's 92%. You might want to staff up, things like that. So really trying to make sure that we have a great experience. And then we always are trying to work on frontline training and especially diversity, equity, inclusion. We're always trying to make sure that Big Sky is welcoming to all. We've got a pretty significant initiative right now in the diversity, equity, and inclusion area. And we'll continue to work and promote that. Great partners throughout the whole program. We're looking at Brand Montana because it's a state initiative where we work within another region called Yellowstone Country. Of course, working with BizRad, working with our hotel industries, Big Sky Resort, Arts Council, Gallatin River Task Force, and BSCO are all partners in doing this work and making the quality visitor experience top notch for Big Sky. That's it.
So as we go, just connecting back into the framework that was up there or was on page 4, as you heard Brad say, there's kind of that higher level strategy of the positive business climate where that also serves the local needs. But can anyone say what one initiative or project is that he's working on, just so you can start thinking about it that way? Sierra. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So I just wanted to ask that. So as you listen to the remaining panelists, start listening to what are these initiatives and projects that you can actually go up to them and ask them questions about and engage as one of the community members here, because this is our plan collectively. So next is Sarah Gaither Bivins, overseeing the robust social services that exist for a thriving community.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today to listen and learn from all of us here. Sarah Gaither Bivins, I run the food bank here in Big Sky and Resource Center. And next week I have my 9-year anniversary, so that's pretty exciting. Some of the partners of the food bank that have been in existence for years are Haven, which is the Women's Resource Center for Domestic Violence. We also work with Wellness in Action very closely. I work with all of the faith communities pretty closely, as well as many HR departments. I also work with things that you wouldn't necessarily think of, like the library, to build wraparound services for people who might be struggling. Most of our services go to people who are in the Big Sky workforce. So developing robust social services as a way to support our workforce has become, I think, one of the most important needs that our community faces right now. Some of the initiatives that we're working on together is increasing access to federal, state, and local social service programs. So this would be something like SNAP, which is food stamps, or WIC for women, infants, and children. Those are resources that have historically been underutilized in our community. There are also very many county and Big Sky kind of pots of resources for people, and developing those resources, I think, is and utilization of those resources is something that will really help households move forward in our community. The second initiative that we're working on is creating new access points to services. So whether that be getting our information out to BASE, to the library, even to every HR department, to know what exists out there for people in our community is really important. And that's something we haven't done a great job of in the past. And so moving forward, we look to creating those access points to both English and Spanish speakers. We know that a large portion of our workforce right now is Spanish speaking, and there are hardly any access points in wraparound services for Spanish speakers. So that's something we're really looking at. The last initiative that we're working on is developing coordinated entry. So what that means is, when somebody does come to the library looking for help with a resume or an application, that the folks at the library know all of the other entry points to services, and are able to really kind of give people a warm handoff to what other services are in the community. We're also looking at kind of spinning off some of the behavioral health initiatives that have historically been wrapped under social services. And I think it's beneficial to outline what the difference is between social service and behavioral health. And I kind of look at it like developing the internal resources of a person is kind of behavioral health, and developing the external resources for people is social service. So like my mother was a dental hygienist, so forgive this analogy, but developing oral health habits and teeth brushing is like behavioral health, and helping people get toothbrushes and a sink to spit in is social service. So those behavioral health initiatives are really probably moving forward going to fall under another coordinator. And if you talk to Shannon or anybody else in the behavioral health circle, Mary Beth, I don't know if she's here, they can talk more about the behavioral health initiatives that are being developed in Big Sky. So I think that's all for me.
So one other thing I just want to underscore is that, as Sarah, you heard Brad and Sarah both talk about all the partners they're working with. So while Brad is here as the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and Sarah's here as the executive director of the food bank, That's not the title that they wear sitting at this table. They're actually the coordinators of these strategies that they're overseeing that is completely partner driven. So whereas today Sarah is representing the strategy of robust social services that exists for a thriving workforce and livable community, there may be another time when another coordinator steps into that role to oversee that multi-partner driven initiative. Does that make sense? So they're here kind of with multiple titles on. Okay, now introducing David O'Connor, who is overseeing the strategy of a variety of housing options for all workers.
Thank you, Ruthie. Am I on? I'm David O'Connor. I'm the executive director of the Big Sky Community Housing Trust. I'm here wearing a different hat recently than I've worn a few times in the community in the past. I've been here about 30 years. I spent most of my career working and later owning Bucks T4, and also spent quite a bit of time with the Chamber of Commerce. So I was on the Chamber of Commerce board when the idea of the housing trust started to kind of become kicking around. And I look around the room and I see many, many faces of people that we've sat around tables with over the years to discuss various solutions to Big Sky's challenges. And housing was one that it didn't start to be a challenge recently. It's been a challenge in this community, certainly as long as I've been here. But starting in around 2012 and then really in earnest in 2017, we as a community, starting with discussions at the chamber, started to really get past that barrier of what do we do to move forward. And so with the help of some outside contractors and consultants, we formed this kind of idea and this plan of, well, the first thing we need to do is form a housing trust. And we figured out the first thing we needed to do was figure out what a housing trust is and then how to form that. And so the Chamber of Commerce was able to kind of get that started with the cooperation of HRDC, the Human Resources Development Council in Bozeman, and seated a board, and the housing trust was born. And then the real hard work started. I give just unbelievable credit to Laura C. Fang as the first executive director and Tim Kent as the first board chair to really get the housing trust to where it's looking today. And I laugh because I run into people around town and they say, so how are things going? And I say, it's really fun. And people look at me like I'm crazy. And the reason it is because of this. There's such a large group of talented, committed people on the same page addressing this problem. And it is such a pleasure to work in collaboration with all of those people. There's no dispute about whether this is a challenge for us. And then it's just a matter of us working together to figure out how to address that. So that does make it fun. And it is a pleasure to work with all of these folks. So our initiative is to increase housing for all local workers. Just that, right? That's all it is. And there's a couple key words in that to me. Provide a variety of affordable housing for all workers. Those three are really what lays out the challenge for us. And thankfully, as Ruthie points out, we're not the only entity that is working on this. The housing challenge affects all entities in this community. There is nothing the Housing Trust can do on its own. We work in collaboration very closely with BizRad, the Chamber of Commerce, the Sewer and Water District, just to name a few, the large private employers, Lone Mountain Land and Big Sky Resort, of course, to kind of anchor that end of things, and then working with the rest of the employment community as smaller employers to try to find those solutions as well. So that's just to name a few. Really, every single entity at this table, we've had many conversations with, either to see where we can pool our resources together for solutions or to see where the needs might meet there. So we have three initiatives basically that come under this, and they're to preserve existing stock of rental housing, to increase rental housing, and to increase ownership housing. So as the Housing Trust started, one of the very biggest challenges then and today that faces the situation with housing in Big Sky is short-term rentals. The short-term rental industry, for those of us as travelers, right, we love, but what it's doing is it's removing what would be potentially long-term rental inventory from the market. And that is manifesting in the challenges we all see, where much of our workforce is unable to find a place to live in Big Sky. So the very first order of business was to preserve that housing, to try to exert some triage and kind of stop the bleeding, slow that down a little bit, the exodus of properties into long-term rental. And some examples, the greatest example of the program that we use to do that is our Rent Local program. Because the desire to go, one of the main desires to go to short-term rental is because long-term rental doesn't provide the income necessary to make the mortgage payment. And so the Rent Local program, utilizing funding from Resort Tax, the Yellowstone Club Community Foundation, Spanish Peaks Foundation, and Moonlight, pays incentive subsidies to property owners to put their property into long-term rental. And we've got a matrix of how that plays out versus bedrooms and time and so on. But that's very clear initiative to try to work toward that goal of, or program rather, to work toward the initiative of preserving existing housing. And then that program has been in place since August of last year. We're up to a little over 50 properties, almost 200 residents have been housed under that program in that time frame. So very popular and successful program in trying to achieve that goal. Another initiative is to increase then rental stock. And we go again to that program also, but now with some of the projects that we're working on constructing, you can see coming up the Spur Road, the Powder Light buildings that are being constructed. And then across the road from that will be a project called Riverview. And those are both projects designed for rental housing. The Powder Light, that's a great example of what, if you recall, in this community, we all voted to increase resort tax to improve our water and sewer district's capacity. And with that came a dedication of some of that additional capacity to workforce housing. So Powder Light was being constructed by Lone Mountain Land anyway. It was a project that was already going to be built. It's dormitory suite style housing geared towards shorter term seasonal employment. But because we had that water to bring to the table, we were able to increase the capacity of what that project was going to build and then have access as leasing agents for our smaller employers to some of those units. So to start increasing rental stock that way. Then across the road is Riverview, which will be a combination of a housing trust project, which will be 25 federally funded low income apartments, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. And then on the other side, also partnering with Lone Mountain Land, they will be building 75 deed restricted workforce apartments, of which the Housing Trust will also have access to 20% there, again, using that water deal. So really trying to illustrate how much collaboration it's taken to get us to here, but also trying to show to you that there are things on the ground that are happening. There are more people housed today because of what this community has done through this organization than there were 4 years ago, unquestionably. And that number is absolutely going up. And then our third initiative is to increase the supply of owned housing. And that's a much longer term project that involves building a lot. The very first activity the Housing Trust did was the construction of Meadowview condos up above the community park, kind of by Sweetgrass Hills. That was, I believe, 52 units that were built at what's now well below 50%, but it was about 50% market rate at the time. 1 and 2 bedroom townhome units. Those were sold very quickly to qualified buyers. We've just had our first resale this summer, so that process is working as it should. So that's one example of building to increase the supply. And then we are working with local developers, working with the Yellowstone Club Community Foundation, Elevate Big Sky, and other partners to try to wrap our minds around what another larger project of maybe a mixed income development or something where we can start focusing on building units that are available both at market rate and at subsidized rate in a format that really promotes the kind of community and experience of living in Big Sky that we're shooting for. So that, I'm sure I've used my 5 minutes.
Thank you, David. Well, and to learn more about housing initiatives, David will be on a panel with other subject area experts on this Thursday at 2 p.m. that you can join virtually for 1 hour. And I encourage you to get on and kind of, that was just the tip of the iceberg, believe it or not, in terms of what's going on with housing. Okay, next up we have Whitney Montgomery, who's representing also 2 strategies for the community. The first is a connected community through trails, parks, and open spaces. And the second is world-class year-round recreation opportunities for Big Sky.
Great, thanks, Ruthie. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Whitney Montgomery, and I have the honor of working with the Big Sky Community Organization, known as BSCO to all of us locals. First off, it's a real honor to be with these coordinators. There's so much good work going on in this town, and it's rare to find this amount of collaboration in any town, much less one of this size. So it's really great. hats off to the chamber and resort tax for pulling this week together. So as Ruthie said, there are two strategies that I'm responsible for coordinating. The first one we'll talk about is a connected community through trails, parks, and open spaces. Now, we all moved here for a lot of reasons, but recreation being a big part of that. We also need to think about connecting our trails and our open spaces just for pedestrian mobility and safe cycling to reduce car traffic. So we look at this in a lot of different levels. We have a lot of partners in this particular strategy. The Gardner River Task Force, SNOW, the Sustainability Network Organization, Montana Land Alliance, the U.S. Forest Service, Big Sky Resort, Lone Mountain Land Company, Spanish Peaks Mountain Club, Lone Mountain Ranch, Southwest Montana Mountain Bike Association, or SWMBA, and the Montana Fish and Wildlife Parks. And some of the projects that I want to mention before I dig into our initiatives are projects that we're doing with other partners. I think it's a big part of this week is learning how we all collaborate. So first, with the U.S. Forest Service, we have several trailheads that BSCO manages that accesses the public forest. The current project is to really improve or maybe even limit parking at Beehive Basin. It's a real issue, and we're working actively with the Forest Service on that. With SWMBA, we're working together on a new trail called Tanner's Way, which is a connection from the Lone Mountain Ranch entry area up to the North Fork trails. Lone Mountain Land Company has been a great partner with us, and we're actively working on a lot of significant trail projects, both in town center and outside of town center that will connect town center to other parts of our community. With the Big Sky Resort, we're working on two projects. One is around Quail Trail here around the golf course, and then also a trail up to the resort using the Poop Chute, which is the funniest name I've ever heard for a trail. But y'all understand the meaning. When I explain to people back in North Carolina where I came from, they laugh. And then, of course, most recently with Visit Big Sky, right, in signage around Ouzel Falls Trail. There was so much traffic at that trail this summer, we had to manage it. So there's a lot of partnership work going on with this particular strategy. So we have three initiatives that are listed. One is to add 20 more miles of trails and paths in the resort district by 2025. We're well on that way right now. To create ADA compliant trail and open space along the Gallatin River, Middle Fork and Town Center, and over to Community Park. It's a much needed, I believe, area that we can serve more visitors and residents. And then the third initiative is to increase park and open space by 35 acres by Q2 of 2024. You know, there's a lot of need in this town, from housing for families moving in, but we also need to think about the families themselves that are moving in. So one of the big initiatives that BSCO is taking on as part of this is how we look at the redesign of Community Park, how we can add more athletic fields, how we can think about other recreational leagues for both young and adults as we move forward. So there's a lot of good work being done with trail connectivity, parks, and open spaces. The second strategy I'm going to talk about is world-class year-round recreational opportunities for Big Sky. Year-round being the key word there, and tons of partners in this particular strategy as well. First, I just want to highlight the partnership with the Big Sky Skating and Hockey Association. You know, we have the ice rink there in Lynn Hill Park. There was a joint effort to put together. This year, BSCO is going to oversee and implement some of the ice programs. So the Hockey Association volunteers can really focus on their strong skill set, which is coaching, training youth. And so that's going to be a great new partnership. With YCCF, we're deep in the partnership around behavioral health initiatives and prevention programs at base through both fitness classes, wellness classes. We host a lot of behavioral health workshops as well inside base. And then the Big Sky pickleball community, growing number of pickleball fanatics in this town. But we have resurfaced the tennis courts and dedicated some pickleball space to that community, as well as provide pickleball courts inside base and in Lynn Hill Park. You know, the year-round recreational opportunities for Big Sky, some are really obvious and some we're working to develop. So the three initiatives that we're working on, one is already complete, and that's opening of base, which is an accessible, recreational, and community center. If you haven't been to base, please come visit. Our goal there is several-fold. One, obviously to provide the recreational space indoors. Mud season, when it's too cold, or just want to work out indoors, but also to make it accessible to our community. So we've been very intentional of keeping our membership fees low. And we also have scholarship funding or financial aid to those families that may need that. There is no reason a member of this town should not be a member at base. Even if you don't use it, please support it, because with the support of a larger community, we can keep our fees low for everybody. Second part is to provide accessible and affordable behavioral health and wellness opportunities through recreational programs. Again, significant funding from YCCF, which has been great. But we deliver 23 fitness and wellness classes per week to our community. Using that funding, we promote all kinds of health and wellness programs, and it's great to see the community utilize those. We've had almost 2,200 individuals come to fitness classes in the first 6 months. The base has been open. For a town of 3,600 people, that's pretty remarkable. The third initiative I want to talk about is expanding youth and adult athletic playing fields that meet regulations, and so we can host tournaments. Again, I was talking to a few parents earlier. The travel distance for our kids to go play soccer right now is quite ridiculous. So we can either grow fields or we can buy them an airplane, whichever makes more sense. But we also want to host tournaments. I think this ties into, working to Visit Big Sky. For those of you who lived in towns where tournaments, soccer tournaments, whatever, are hosted, it's a huge economic development opportunity for this town. But we need to make regulation size fields where spectators can observe, on and on and on. So a lot of work to be done there. So fun stuff going on. Feel free to talk to me about any other questions you have on either connecting our community through trails or the year-round recreational opportunities we have here. So thank you all.
Thanks, Whitney. I want to just give a little shout out. The first weekend, I think it was a second week of work, Whitney was a part of what was called a base summit, which is basically an invitation for community members and programs to come together and brainstorm how do they really want to utilize base, but also the broader Big Sky community for recreation and programming initiatives. And a lot of that is represented here. So Whitney basically listened to that, right when he took in the job, and then immediately put those requests into place with the strategies and initiatives. So again, encouraging everyone to speak up because those voices matter. All right, next up, we have Chief Megaard overseeing the high quality public safety, which is very critical. Chief, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Greg Megaard, Fire Chief, Big Sky Fire. It's truly an honor to be sitting at this table today with the leaders of this community. This is where things happen with the partnerships everybody spoke about with BizRad, the Chamber, you name it. We rely on each other, we support each other, and it's just a great working group to be a part of. As Ruthie said, public safety. So everything that you hear about being spoken to today impacts public safety. People come visit, live, recreate, whatever they do impacts our fire department, the sheriff's office, which are our partners, emergency management, and then the county search and rescue. In the last 5 years, the demand for emergency services has tripled in this community. When you look at the people that come and visit here in the wintertime and the summertime, we used to call it a shoulder season. It's no longer a shoulder season because it's only a matter of weeks, and now we're kicking into the next endeavor. So when you look at that strategy, we take that very seriously about what we can continue to do to improve public safety in this community and for our neighbors. 3 of the initiatives we have, first one is enhance our radio communication for all emergency and non-emergent departments in Big Sky and the surrounding areas. We all know the challenges, the mountains, when you look at cell phone use, towers at 5 to 6 o'clock, how hard it is to get service. Well, when you take a radio system that you rely on people's lives when they're in house fires, any kind of emergency, having better communication is critical to make sure that we're taking care of not only of our own people, but for the community. I'm really happy to report that with the partnership with Gallatin County, the funding, we've enhanced our radio program up here. We've enhanced the towers. We've all bought dual band radios. So now, we have VHF at 800, which gives, if you go to 800, gives you tremendous building penetration for communication. So when you look at buildings like the Wilson, the Montage, things are being built the one and only. When you get these large structures, it really helps to amplify and have our radio traffic get into buildings. Whereas before we'd have these dead zones in buildings where we could not communicate. And as a commander of an incident, that's very unnerving. So that was projected to be done in July. Unfortunately, we all have experienced the delays with COVID in the past 2 years. We hope that this program will be up and fully done and running come November. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. The second is develop an emergency evacuation plan and safety zones. I think everybody, if you haven't seen the one page that came out through the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office, that was a big part of getting information out to the community. We're going to continue to enhance that, build that, working on some other programs that I'll speak about later this week at the emergency management symposium that we're all going to sit down and do. That's a big, important piece that not only the fire department, the sheriff's office, search and rescue, for every member that's sitting in this room, every person that visits this community. So we're really excited to keep continuing to work on that. We've done a big tabletop here last summer that included Spanish Peaks, Moonlight, Big Sky Fire, Yellowstone Club Fire, the sheriff's office, and all the security companies within these communities. Because when it comes to evacuation, obviously the fire department's pretty engaged in the fire. So law enforcement, other people that can help with the emergency evacuation notification is so important. So we're going to continue to enhance that program and work on that. And then the last initiative is and ensure sufficient public safety staffing for not only the Big Sky Fire Department, but the Sheriff's Office, Search and Rescue, and Emergency Management. I know Emergency Management, Patrick Lonergan will speak to it this week, but it just entered into a new interlocal agreement that they're going to cover part of the Big Sky area, BizRad area, our district, for Madison County. And I think, don't want to speak out of turn, but with the help of BizRad, there's another position funded to help have somebody in Big Sky more than we typically have. That's a big deal. And then when you look at the staffing models, you know, as Big Sky Fire gets busier, the sheriff's office gets busier to get more sheriff's deputies up in this community, just continue to make it safer. So with that, I'll.
Thank you. For more about emergency management and public safety, tune in tomorrow, 2 p.m. for the virtual panel. Okay, next up, we have Ron Edwards talking about improving and maintaining water and sewer infrastructure.
Thanks, Ruthie. Good afternoon. So I'm Ron Edwards, manager for the Water and Sewer District. The past 27 years, one day closer to retirement. So our list is 4 bullet points. They're very short, but I can tell you they're kind of massive topics. And I'll start with the first one, expand sewage treatment and disposal. So I think most of you have seen the big build going in across from the Ace Hardware on the north side of the Middle Fork. We started putting up our vertical panels. So the vertical build of the new treatment plant is going fairly quickly. We started construction July a year ago. So we're 1 year, 2 months into the build of a 2.5-year project. And I tell people I was born in the 50s, so I like to finish what I start. So my goal is to kind of hang around till the new plant's online. So we've still got a ways to go. We're scheduled to start running what I'll call liquids through the plant beginning spring of 2023, May, and then final construction will finish in 2024. It effectively doubles our treatment plant capacity. So the current plant is 650,000 gallons a day. Flows right now are less than 400,000 a day. When the resort opens up, we'll average 5 to 550. So we still have capacity in the current plant, but you don't want to run it up to the limits of capacity before you have a new plant. So we're able to fully bypass the new build. What I mean by that is we can take our sewer flows, run it through our existing plant while we're building the new one, which is a great thing to have in your back pocket when you're taking and constructing a wastewater treatment plant. A lot of times you've got to figure out how you're going to make both work and bypass your current facilities. We don't have that problem. So historically, we've been 100% irrigation on 3 golf courses, the Meadow, Spanish Peaks, Yellowstone Club. Spanish Peaks, we started moving water up there 2 years ago. Yellowstone Club in 2002. We're changing that disposal, number one, because we're going to have a new plant online that'll give us the ability to treat 3 to 4 times better in terms of total nitrogen, total phosphorus numbers. That allows us to put water in different places. So there's kind of 2 big buckets we're working toward. One is snowmaking, and this has been a community effort for at least a decade, and it's identified in facility plans that go back into the mid-90s that the district's been working on. But snowmaking, the needs of snowmaking for the ski resorts has gotten bigger over time. We think that reuse of treated water for snowmaking purposes is a good fit. It gets us out of having to construct these massive lined storage ponds because it gives us a winter disposal option. The Yellowstone Club recently got a permit from DEQ to start snowmaking on a fairly small scale. I don't know that that's going to happen this winter, but the plan would be, I see a no from a few folks in the audience, but for next winter then. And then I know Spanish Peaks is working on some future snowmaking for the base area up around the Montage. So the other big disposal option will be groundwater disposal. And we've got studies going on in the canyon area of Big Sky, working with the new canyon district to identify potential groundwater disposal sites in the canyon. That's another opportunity to get into disposal that gives us a winter disposal option that we currently don't have. Other things we're looking at a high level is taking and going to indirect potable recharge. As I'll get into, water capacity is going to be a bigger and bigger topic around here over time. So one of the things we're looking at with our consultants is taking very high level treated water, putting it back into aquifers for recharge for eventual groundwater consumption. It's being done in other parts of the country, not being done currently in Big Sky, but we are looking at it for the future. Expand water capacity. We just finished up drilling 9 test holes on the mountain village, trying to identify water up on the mountain, which is the best place for us to find water because we can share it down to the meadow. We did find some water, 70, 80 gallons a minute with decent water quality. Those aren't great candidates for public wells. You want to be in the 100 GPM or bigger for public water wells. We're on the 10th well. We didn't get it drilled to completion. It's down near the Thunderwolf ski lift area across from Flatiron. We got surface casing set and had to pull the rig off. So that well was started and we did not finish that. We just finished up the source capacity plan with our consultant, Mark Kinane, Western Groundwater Resources. In that report, Mark identified some future well points that we could drill in the meadow, specifically 2 other points in the meadow aquifer north of the golf course. We already have 5 well points. He thinks we could probably get 2 more, which potentially helps us in the meadow village for additional water capacity. Water conservation, I think for those of you that are connected to our water system and get bills from us, we implemented a water smart platform for your billing, which integrates 3 big databases. We did fixed base metering, so we get real-time meter usage data. So if you leave a hose running 24/7, you're going to get a notification that, hey, something's wrong, something's going on with your water consumption. The whole driver for that is to make customers aware of their water usage. They can also pay their water bill online, and you can set thresholds and alarms in that platform. So with all the absentee owners we've got, they can go in and put key points of usage that they'll get a text message to notify them that, hey, something's going on, something's running. Toilets are predominantly the biggest problem we've got. Also underwater conservation, we've been very proactive about repairing leaks. So we've done a lot of leak repairs on the water system over the years, and that's like drilling and finding new water capacity. So we've even seen demand curves drop in the mountain village. Those are predominantly through leak repair efforts and recovering water that was otherwise lost. The last one is the Canyon District. So that, I think, started up 2 years ago. It's a new county water and sewer district, just like we are. Working towards central sewer collection in the Canyon area to eventually connect to a lift station at the Conoco and pump up to our new wastewater treatment plant. To do all that, we need to have the Canyon disposal identified. So if we're going to take a gallon from the canyon, we'd like to see 2 gallons of disposal in the canyon through groundwater discharge permits. So that's going to be a big initiative. That's going to take some time. We just spun up a subcommittee with a couple of my board members with the canyon folks to start working on that. So before I lose my voice, I better stop.
Thanks, Ron. If you didn't learn something about water today, please tune in tomorrow at noon for a deep dive into more information. Ha, you got it. Right? Okay, next up, last but definitely not least, Kristin Gardner, our coordinator for the strategy of our natural resources are protected and enhanced for future generations.
Thank you, Ruthie, and thank you to the Resort Tax District and to the Chamber for hosting us today. And like a lot of the other panelists have said, I really feel fortunate to be able to work with all these community leaders on this process. So my strategy is our natural resources are protected and enhanced for future generations. So most of us probably moved here because we love the natural environment and want to protect it and keep it that way. And so that's really what this strategy is all about. There are numerous partners that are working on this strategy with me. That includes Montana Land Reliance, Gallatin Valley Land Trust, Gallatin and Invasive Species Alliance, SNOW, BSCO, the Chamber and Visit Big Sky, Fish, Wildlife and Parks, DEQ, the Center of Large Landscape Conservation, Custer Gallatin National Forest, the Water and Sewer Districts, numerous landowners, and the resorts. And if I left you out, I'm sorry. There are lots and lots of people that are working on this strategy. Because we all feel it's really important to protect our natural resources. So there are 6 initiatives that we're working on. The first is to increase awareness of residents and visitors and local natural resources. A lot of projects in this initiative. The Chamber just started, move towards this visitor management initiative, as Brad mentioned. And so they have signage and lots of outreach about how visitors need to protect the environment. Gallatin Invasive Species Alliance, they have demonstration gardens. They host lots of outreach events, lots of direct homeowner outreach. I live in Ramshorn, and if you haven't had Jen come out and talk to you about the noxious weeds on your property, I highly recommend it. She's a world of knowledge in that area. And then as far as the task force goes, we have held 14 outreach events over the past year. We just updated our native landscaping guide to help you go native. That reduces the amount of water that you use and also the amount of fertilizer that is used. Our water conservation program is really based on outreach, and we've saved 8 million gallons a year annually since the start of the program. The second initiative that we're working on is to improve water quality of local streams and aquifers. We've been working really closely with the Gallatin, the new water and sewer district that Ron mentioned. We want to see those old septic systems cleaned up that are next to the river. And we just completed an assessment that prioritized septic systems down in the canyon for connection. And that was funded by BizRad. We're also working with the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, Upper Missouri Waterkeeper, American Rivers, and Greater Yellowstone Coalition to add state and federal protections to the Gallatin. This includes a 303 delisting, which is a state protection, as well as wild and scenic designation. And then a bunch of restoration projects that are being planned right now. There's 3 on the West Fork, 1 on the South Fork, and 1 on the Middle Fork, being led by BSOA, Lone Mountain Land Company, and the task force. The third initiative that we're working on is to enhance and protect critical habitat for wildlife and water. Gallatin Invasive Species Alliance has been working hard to protect habitat for our bighorn sheep to get them off the road. Montana Land Alliance has conserved over 15,000 acres of land in the Big Sky area, 2.5 in the last couple of years. The Yellowstone Club has treated nearly 40 acres of strategic fuels reduction, and that's aiming to enhance the forest health. And they've also done quite a bit of outreach with YC landowners to perform similar work on their lands. And then the Center for Large Landscape Conservation just conducted this assessment to look at wildlife crossings so that they can provide that information to our local leaders on how we can protect wildlife from protecting the highway or crossing the highway. All right, the fourth initiative is to build resilience of water resources for future growth and drought. We just completed a water conservation and drought management plan that will be expanding our water conservation program. This summer, we worked with Spanish Peaks and Moonlight to update their covenants on water conservation, and we're currently working on a water balance and modeling future snowpack so that we can better understand what the future water supply looks like. Ron mentioned the snowmaking initiatives that are out there. These really actually have a really huge environmental benefit as well, building resilience to our water supply. And we have been working with Spanish Peaks and Big Sky Resort on getting snowmaking on their property and worked with the Yellowstone Club for close to 10 years trying to get that project done. And I think that will be starting next winter. And then the Yellowstone Club has added fixed base metering as well as what Ron had mentioned earlier. They saved nearly 2 million gallons of water through awareness and education over the last 6 months. So that's pretty impressive. The fifth initiative is to improve ecological condition and management of river access sites on the Gallatin. That's largely led by our organization in partnership with the Custer Gallatin National Forest. And we just completed a river restoration strategy with the Forest Service. And currently we have a bunch of projects in the design phase at Porcupine Beaver Creek, Lava Lake, Portal Creek, Great Creek, and 10 undefined access points. And we recently completed a project just upstream of Deer Creek. Hopefully you all have had a chance to use that and great river access site. The Gallatin Invasive Species Alliance has treated weeds at our restoration sites along the main stem as well as conducting 2 weed pulls. And then the U.S. Forest Service recently added a river ranger, and that position is temporary, or I guess seasonal, and that is focused on improving and managing river access along the main stem. And last but not least is our 6th initiative, which is collecting that critical scientific data that's needed to manage our natural resources. Fish, Wildlife, and Park recently has conducted 2 fish population counts on the West Fork and on the Gallatin. And I'm hoping that they're going to come and share that information with the Big Sky community this winter. The Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology completed a report of the extensive groundwater monitoring project in Big Sky. That I can point anyone in the direction of that study. Great information came out of that study. And then they're also completing a first draft of another extensive study in Gallatin Canyon. The task force is working on trying to figure out why we're seeing these massive algae blooms. And we're working with the DEQ on that study. We have learned that additional nitrogen will cause more algae growth. So the more that we can work on these projects like improving the wastewater treatment plant and providing central sewer to the canyon, we know that will reduce the amount of algae that we'll see in future years. And then finally, we're working with the Gallatin Local Water Quality District, the Bureau of Mines and Geology, the Water and Sewer District on monitoring groundwater wells in the meadow to better understand nitrogen sources. And one of the big outcomes of that is that we're seeing really high nitrogen in wells that are upgrading of the Big Sky Golf Course. And so there's just some more understanding that we need to better understand where those sources are coming from so that we can manage the nitrogen and prevent future algae blooms. So with that, thank you all very much. And I'm more than happy to talk to anyone on all of this. I know it's a lot of information and I've left out a lot of good work that's also being done, but didn't want to have your attention for more than 5 minutes.
So thank you again to all the panelists. Again, these are just 7 out of 12 individuals on the coordinating council, and then dozens of additional partners working to bring this plan into fruition. But we're going to open it up now for Q&A. So if you have a question, we'll walk around and, oh, yeah, exactly. So go ahead and raise your hand, and Anna or I will, yeah. Say your name and then your question.
My name is Jim Eaton, and this is not a question, it's an observation. I suspect I'm one of the oldest, if not the oldest person in the room, and maybe one of the longest indirect members of your organization as an owner in West Fork. My wife and I stumbled into buying a home in 1982 when the only McBride and Ladora and horses were our backyard. So it's been a great part of our family, even though we're here on a detached basis. But I want you to know, I would have never known about the level of collaboration and the wonderful things that are going on here if my wife and I hadn't been here this week. And I read about this, and I said, I got to go and learn. So I want to say thank you, but I also want to encourage you to find a way to get this information out to all the litany of absentee owners that you have, so they really know the level of collaboration and wonderful work that's going into this community that will be available for my kids and grandkids. So just a big thank you.
We'll pay you afterwards for that perfect comment. The data, yeah. The next project. Sure. So we all are collaborating on a data project. So one of the things that in response to your inquiry about how do we share this, there's a lot of projects going on, and part of it is how do we know what goals we have and how we're going to accomplish them if we don't understand what the baseline data is, and then what some of the milestones are we hope to reach along the way. So for example, if we're talking about housing, which is, for a lot of people, a very, kind of on fire issue in this community, how many beds do we have in Big Sky? How many are occupied by full-time workforce? How many are absentee owners? How many are on the short-term rental? And once we have that baseline data, which David's in the process of, compiling all that, then we can make really tangible goals about, percentages of those homes or those beds that we want to, transition. And the goal of doing all of this collaboratively with the coordinating council is to share it with the community at large. So there will actually be a data platform coming to you in 2023 that you'll be able to look at and understand the status of all of these projects and what the milestones are that these coordinators are working on. Anything you want to add? Okay. All right. Any other questions from the audience? Did anyone learn anything today? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're just saying you learned something. Way to go. Yes. Yeah.
Hi, thank you all for everything that you're doing. I'm not sure exactly to whom to direct this question, but as much as I appreciate that there are 7 of you here, I know there are a few people from the coordinating council who are not here today. And so I'm wondering if there is an update that we can get about some of these things like healthcare, education, and so on, that of the people who are not present.
Great question. As you can see, we only have so much time in one session, but the plan was to take what we did here, build on it. If it's successful, we'll run through the next set of strategies in the next session.
In addition, Also, I encourage you out this Wednesday from 3 to 6 p.m. There's an expo where all the nonprofits will actually have tables here at the Wilson to come and learn more about what all the partners are working on more in depth. Okay, any other questions before we have our closing? Oh, great.
For the housing trust, is there a criteria for being a renter in the rent local program?
The question was, is there a criteria for being a renter in the rent local program? All right. Well, there's criteria for being a renter in the rent local program, and we primarily interface with the property owners, and then we offer, if the property owner would like, tenant screening services, though the property owner is not required to do that. And then we just do a standard tenant screening, through a third party for creditworthiness and reference check and so on. But other than that, there is not criteria to be in the rent local program. It's more just matching up property owner and tenant.
Any other questions in the audience? Okay, I'll do another one online. Our community's workforce is split between the Gallatin Valley and Big Sky proper. What consideration is put into the community members who are working on our strategies here, the people working on the strategies here, to our community members that contribute to the success of Big Sky, but don't necessarily live here? Sorry, I know it's kind of cumbersome. It's kind of cumbersome. Just the idea of, if our workforce is split between Big Sky proper and Bozeman or Belgrade and even down to West Yellowstone, and this is a community plan for all of Big Sky, what considerations are being placed in maybe any of your strategies that think about that sort of community that's spread geographically beyond our borders?
Great question, actually. I think at least I can speak from a workforce standpoint is that we continue to, if you lived in Belgrade, but you're commuting an hour and 10 minutes each way to Big Sky, you put in a 10-hour day and then you turn around and go back. I'm concerned about that parent having to make that decision of what to do with their child when they're being gone out of Belgrade for 12 hours. And so one of the initiatives that we're working on back to childcare was to have more local childcare available here, where that transportation, where that parent could come here, bring the child here, and then continue to do work. If something was to happen, they can come back and check in on their child. So that's just one of multiple options. The other would be transportation. We're constantly trying to get our head wrapped around transportation. On Thursday night at our builders forum, we'll be sharing some of our economic impact data, and particularly looking at how many people are commuting to Big Sky on a daily basis to work. And it's well over 70%. So it's pretty significant. So there's all these different variables that are going for the workforce to make sure that they have a good job here, but they also have the resources they need. And I don't think we're playing exclusive that this is just for people in Big Sky. I think we're looking at it as a community-wide.
I know that at the food bank, about half of my customers right now are living outside of Big Sky. That's a big change from the past years. Historically, it's been more like 20 to 25% who resided outside of Big Sky. So we know that things are changing. The workforce increasingly is having to live, in Bozeman, Belgrade, even farther, Amsterdam. People drive every day. So I know that for social services in Big Sky, they're open to anyone, no matter where you reside. My Food Bank is a program of HRDC, which is kind of the county-wide social services provider. We serve Gallatin Park and Marr counties, and currently working on a big new, I guess, a resource hub. It will be for everyone, and a place where people can access food resources, social services, and in a few years' time, more emergency housing. So those are some of the programs that we're working on, if that helps answer the question.
I think that's a great question, and most for the Housing Trust, most of the initiatives that we're working on are located here, or all of them located here within Big Sky. But I think this question surfaces another issue, and this to Ruthie's point about the data collection project that we're working on. As Brad mentioned, we know a commuter number. We know that somewhere between 60 and 80% of our workforce is commuting in, but what we don't know is how many of those people are doing that by choice. We kind of have an assumption that that translates into housing need, but that's not exactly true. There's a significant part of the workforce that is living in other parts of the valley because that's where they want to live for various other reasons. So that's what I look forward to in our realm, in the housing realm, is understanding more about the nature of that workforce and what their desires are so that we can serve them better.
Sure, I'd certainly just add, I mean, all the facilities that BSCO operates and the parks and trails are open to visitors and residents alike. We'd love to have the workforce that live outside of town to come to base during the lunch hour and work out, or use the other classes that we have for their own behavioral health needs. So a lot of opportunity in the strategies that BSCO is overseeing to serve non-residents.
Years ago, we used to think that everybody needed to live in Big Sky, working water, sewer, because of response time. And we've got rid of that model years ago because not everybody lives in Big Sky, myself included. What we do is we invest a lot of money into SCADA systems, computer SCADA. So it gives us the ability to not only monitor our sewer and water system, but it gives us control of that remotely. And so we've found that that's a key part of what we need to do and keep doing at a high level to allow our workforce to be not only some in Big Sky, but also in the valley. So my guys and gals are spread out to Belgrade, to Big Sky. About half are in Big Sky, and I'm glad half are here. But I don't know that we can keep that model going forward.
Very similar for Big Sky Fire Department. I think 48% of our workforce currently lives in Big Sky. It means 52% are driving back and forth, myself included. We found a number of years ago, we did require everybody to live in Big Sky. And that was amazing to be able to do that. Those days are long gone just based on real estate costs and everything that goes with it that we all talk about and deal about every day. We found that we were really having trouble recruiting staff to join the Big Sky Fire Department. They wanted to work for us. They wanted to work with us, but it would come down to cost of living and having to live in Big Sky. It was a choice to go somewhere else. And once we opened up our residency to live down in the valley or over in the Madison Valley, our applications went from anywhere from 15 to 20 to over 100 every time we put them out. So that made a significant impact. We'd all love to live and work in Big Sky. Unfortunately, that's just not the reality today.
Greg and I are neighbors in Fort Myers.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. I know I'm incredibly proud to be a member of this community and to work with all of you here. I really appreciate all of the coordinators who came to speak today. And as a reminder, this recording will be online at the Big Sky Community Week website. I look forward to seeing a lot of you this week at our various events. And next up tonight is Vote Big Sky at 5 p.m. at Bucks T4. So I hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody.